Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for a deep dive into something we all think we're pretty good at, but could always be better?
I know, I certainly could.
Yeah, me too, right? Communication. I mean, it's how we connect with the world, how we build relationships, how we get things done.
It's everything.
It really is. And you know what? When I saw the source material you sent over for this deep dive, I was like, okay, time for a refresh. Because even though we communicate constantly, there's always room for improvement, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes just that little bit of extra effort can make a world of difference.
Totally. So whether you're looking to boost your career, strengthen your relationships, or just feel more confident in your everyday interactions, this deep dive is packed with insights to help you communicate more effectively.
And we're going to get granular with it, looking at real-world examples and actionable tips you can start using right away.
Exactly. No fluff, just practical advice to up your communication game. So the source material kicks things off with a definition of communication that really got me thinking. It says communication is a two-way process involving speaking, listening, and understanding.
So I think a lot of people forget about that last part, the understanding part.
Right. Like, we think just because we said something, it means the other person automatically gets it.
Exactly. But so much can get lost in translation, right? Misinterpretations, assumptions, distractions.
Oh, totally. And that's when those communication breakdowns happen.
Exactly. And it's not always about major misunderstandings either. Sometimes it's those subtle things, like a difference in tone or body language, that can create friction.
It's like that saying, what's obvious to you is amazing to me.
Yes. We all come to the table with our own perspectives and experiences, so it's crucial to be mindful of that and make a conscious effort to bridge that gap.
Absolutely. So how do we do that? Well, the source material breaks it down into three core areas: clarity, active listening, and nonverbal cues.
Three areas that are essential for making sure our message is not only heard, but also understood.
Music to my ears.
So let's break it down. Okay, so of those three areas, clarity, active listening, and nonverbal cues, I have to say active listening is the one that I'm like, ooh, yeah, got to work on that.
It's funny how, we think listening is so simple, but it's actually a skill, isn't it?
Totally. And I think a lot of times we're so busy thinking about what we're going to say next that we don't really hear what the other person is saying.
It's so true. And we miss so much when we do that. The nuances, the emotions, the real message behind the words.
Absolutely. And that's where active listening comes in. The source material had some really interesting tips on this, like obviously eye contact, not interrupting. But then it goes deeper into this idea of reflective listening. Have you heard of that?
Oh yeah, reflective listening is huge. It's not just about hearing the words, but it's about reflecting back what you're hearing to make sure you're understanding it correctly and to show the other person that you're really trying to get them.
Right, so it's like you're holding up a mirror to what they're saying. Exactly. And you can do that by summarizing what you've heard, asking clarifying questions, or even just repeating back key phrases.
So instead of just saying, huh, or yeah, it's more like, okay, so it sounds like you're feeling frustrated because...
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're feeling frustrated because, or what I'm hearing you say is, you're putting it back on them in a way that shows you're really listening.
That makes so much sense. And I can see how that would be so powerful, not just in personal relationships, but also in a work setting.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone's explaining a complex idea. Instead of just pretending you understand, you could say something like, okay, so to clarify, you're saying that.
And then they know you're really paying attention.
Exactly. And they feel heard and understood.
Which is huge. And it builds trust, right?
100%. Trust is built on that foundation of feeling heard and understood.
I love that. It's like this little communication hack that can make a huge difference. And speaking of making a difference, this source material also talks a lot about empathy. Which, I feel like we all hear that word all the time, but what does it actually mean in terms of communication?
That's a great question. Because empathy is often misunderstood as just feeling sorry for someone, but it's so much deeper than that.
Right.
It's about really trying to see the world from the other person's perspective, even if you don't agree with them.
So it's like stepping into their shoes for a minute.
Exactly. And that takes effort. It takes actively listening, asking questions, and being open to seeing things in a new way.
And I imagine that's especially important when you're dealing with difficult conversations or conflicts, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because when you can approach a conflict from a place of empathy, it completely changes the dynamic.
Because it's not about avoiding the conflict altogether. It's about approaching it in a way that's respectful and understanding.
Absolutely. And that can be really hard, especially when emotions are running high. But that's where those communication skills become even more important.
So true. So, like, what are some practical tips for navigating those tough conversations? The source material had some good advice on that.
Yeah, it talks about like staying calm, focusing on solutions, using I statements and all that good stuff.
Hmm.
But one thing that really stood out to me was the idea of replacing blame with observation.
Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about that.
So instead of saying like, you're always late, which is a blame statement, you could say, I noticed that you've been late to the last few meetings.
Which is just stating a fact.
Exactly. It's not about accusing or attacking. It's about simply observing what's happening. And that can make a huge difference in how the other person receives the message.
Because it feels less confrontational.
Exactly. It opens up a space for dialogue instead of shutting it down.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about clarity, active listening, nonverbal cues, empathy, choosing our words wisely, and we've even touched on how to handle those trickier conversations. Is there anything else we need to cover in our communication skills deep dive?
You know, I think the source material did a fantastic job of laying out the key principles. And the great thing is these are all skills that we can continue to develop and refine over time.
Absolutely. It's a journey, not a destination, right?
Exactly. And like any journey, it's helpful to have a map. And I think this deep dive has given us a fantastic map for navigating the complex and often messy world of human communication.
Totally. And like any good map, it's something we can refer back to again and again as we encounter new terrain.
I love that analogy.
I mean, who doesn't love a good analogy, right? But in all seriousness, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive. And I think the key takeaway here is that even small improvements in our communication skills can have a ripple effect on our relationships, our work, and our overall well-being.
I completely agree.
So, to our listeners, I encourage you to take even just one of the tips we've discussed today and put it into practice this week. See what happens. You might be amazed by the results.
And let us know how it goes. We'd love to hear your communication wins.
Absolutely. We're all in this together, right? Helping each other communicate more effectively and build stronger, more meaningful connections.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive. A huge thank you to you for sharing your expertise with us today.
It was my pleasure. Always happy to talk about communication.
And to our amazing listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey of communication mastery. Until next time, keep those conversations flowing.